How to build a brand that's ready to grow. Get ready to get more of the right kinds of clients. So, branding is much more than a logo or a color palette. Yes, that is part of the equation, and we are going to talk about it, but that is not the only thing. The goal of branding is to attract the right people and repel the wrong ones. There are certain populations that you are meant to serve in your private practice and certain populations that you aren't. So let's learn how to attract the right people to your practice. So quickly, what branding is branding is about giving meaning to a company and shaping how people recognize and experience your business. Ask yourself, how do you want people to feel about you and your private practice? One of my all-time favorite quotes is from Maya Angelou, who famously said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So think about this. How do you want your private practice to make people feel? That is what your branding should represent. Let's talk about the 3 P's of brand strategy: purpose, positioning, and personal connection. And yes, you are going to have a worksheet that helps tie everything together. So why purpose matters to branding is because it has to be clear to you and to the community what is the purpose of your practice. Now, you've already thought about some of these things, but I am going to ask you to think about it one more time, because every time you have to sit down and think about and write out your mission and your vision and your values, you get better at doing it. So remember, your mission is why are you doing what you're doing? Your values, which we haven't talked about yet, are what do you and your private practice value? Later in the Grow Your Team module, there will be a lesson on company values. But for now, just jot down what do you and your private practice value? And then remember, vision is what is your 3 to 5 year vision for how your private practice will serve your clients and the community. The next of the 3 P's is positioning. So this has to do with your target market. What population or populations do you serve? How you are positioned in the market. For example, is your private practice exclusive and expensive or accessible and affordable? You want people to know that when they look at your website and when they think about your branding. You can go either way on this, but you have to make a decision about what is your private practice going to represent and who is it going to attract. And then brand awareness refers to what marketing channels will you use to reach your ideal clients. For example, Facebook or print marketing in local papers or magazines. Instagram, local health fairs and clinics. Think of marketing channels as local, digital, and relationship-based. How are you going to reach your ideal clients? And the last P is personal connection. So personality. What is the personality of your practice? Is it casual, serious, fun? For example, if you're a corporate SLP providing services to people who work for companies, you might have more of a serious vibe. But if you work with kids and offer summer camps, you might have more of a casual or a fun vibe. You get to pick which personality represents your private practice. Okay, brand voice refers to how do you talk about your practice? What words do you use? Do you use words like family-centered or academic success or individualized attention? Think about which words you want to use to describe your practice. And lastly, a tagline. Now, these can take a long time to come up with the perfect one, so take a stab at it, and if you don't feel like you nail it right away, come back and do this later. But basically, a tagline is about a phrase or one sentence that describes what your private practice is all about. The most famous one is Nike's Just Do It. And Nike as a brand, or when I think of Nike anyway, I think of sleek, high-performance gear that allows athletes to focus on the sport while looking good too. Okay, now let's talk about visual identity, or the look of your brand. Your visual identity is supposed to convey your private practice's mission and values. It should definitely resonate with your clients, again, so we're attracting the right people and repelling the wrong ones, and it has to be something that you love the look of. For example, you may have noticed that I like my visuals very clean. There's a lot of white with a few pops of color. There are other people who like a lot of bright colors and loud colors. And well, that's just not my style. So even though that may be something that some people in my target audience like, well, I don't like it. So I stick to clean visuals. What will you pick? There are 4 main components that people think of when they think of a visual identity for a company. First, the logo. Second, the colors, which are broken down into things called hex codes, which are, it's either 5 or 6-digit letter and number combinations that tell exactly what color it is, what fonts are used, and also images that represent the company. You may have gone through the process of figuring all of this out. If you have, great, you're a step ahead. If you haven't, or if you feel like you're ready to update your visual identity, now is a great time to do it. One of the things that I'm going to teach you how to do in the Grow Your Client Base module is how to create a brand board. I have the one that my designer created for the independent clinician on the side just to give you a sense of what these look like. But basically it's a board where you put your logo and your colors and also your hex codes and your fonts and images that represent your brand's identity. Now my designer created this for me, but I'm going to teach you how to do it in Canva. Now warning, this is a low priority task. Do not get distracted by this. It's a lot of fun, but it can also be very distracting. So if you have time to do it, do it. But if you don't, do something else and come back to this later. This is also a good time for you to be thinking about how do you feel about your branding and your logo and everything else. It's okay to update it every so often. You want some consistency so that once people learn your logo and your branding and your identity, they're not thrown off when you change it all together. But I've definitely gone through a couple of updates and it gets better every single time. The look that you start with isn't necessarily going to last forever. And that's a good thing because as businesses grow, they have to evolve. And you are in a state of evolving right now. So yes, I have a worksheet for you that's going to help tie all of this together and help you build a brand that is ready to grow. There are boxes on there to fill out and really think about your purpose, your positioning, your personal connection, and I want you to decide if it's time to update your branding. So your next steps are to fill out the worksheet that I just went over and to think about your branding and update it as needed. And completely optional is to create a brand board, which the instructions for how to do that appear in the Grow Your Client Base module. Thinking about branding is time well spent, but it also can take away from doing other things. So I recommend setting aside a couple hours and going through all of this and really thinking about your brand and making a plan to update it as needed. This is especially important to do before you say, hire someone to do your website or spend a bunch of money on marketing materials. There's a reason why I talk about this in the pre-work section of Grow Your Private Practice. Because as you start doing things like having more presence on social media, you're going to want to make sure that your branding is set up and ready to go. And as always, if you have any questions about this, please drop them in the Grow Your Private Practice Facebook group. See you there.